Hello everybody and welcome to the Derek Ruby Show. I am your host, the previously mentioned Mr. Ruby, and this is Things You Should Watch on Amazon Prime Video. To start things off, The Boys. Now, I do not watch a lot of Prime original series. The Boys is probably one you've heard about, and maybe you haven't had time to see it, but my god, is it amazing. It is a comic book adaptation of one of my favorite comic book writers, Garth Ennis. The best way that I could describe this show is, what if asshole people in real life had superpowers? And what would be the result of that? So yeah, it's basically like Brightburn, but actually done correctly. But it's not just about the superheroes. It's also about the people that are affected by these horrible superheroes. That's why it's called The Boys, because the boys are people that in some kind of way these superheroes have fucked their lives up. And this show is honestly a good example of why mankind is not born with superpowers. Don't go into this expecting it to be like an MCU movie or one of the DC films. So whether you like superhero movies or you don't, this is violent, it's gritty, fun, and I would put my money on the first 5 minutes or so of this show, you're going to be hooked. So don't miss out on The Boys. Kevin Spencer. This was the longest running adult animated show out of Canada, and nobody's ever heard of it. All the episodes are available on Prime as well as YouTube, but they're much better quality on Prime, so you should see it there. But Kevin Spencer is about a chain-smoking alcoholic sociopath, and his parents are basically people that just drink a lot and live off of welfare. I know, it sounds pretty fucking insane, because it is. But don't let that fool you. Even though sometimes the humor is a little lowbrow, which I don't particularly care for, the cleverness and the sophistication in the comedy far supersedes it. Now, when you watch the first season, it's going to be really jarring. It looks like somebody made it on a Flash cartoon in the 90s. But it was one of these things I just couldn't stop watching. And the second season, it's vastly improved. And by the third season, it really finds its footing. And by the end of it, the animation is top-notch, especially compared to where it started from. The thing about this show is, when I finally finished watching the whole thing, I was sad that it was over. I really enjoyed all the characters, and I would really like to watch the thing again. So if you enjoy watching adult animated cartoons, this may not be the best one you'll ever see, but Kevin Spencer definitely is an undiscovered gem. The Friday the 13th franchise, movies 1 through 8 are available on Prime, the original Paramount films, and Friday the 13th just celebrated its 40-year anniversary, so if you've never seen these movies, now's your chance. Now, I would be lying if I said every one of these films was good, but even the bad ones are a guilty pleasure of mine. After all, Friday the 13th is my favorite horror franchise, and I couldn't honestly say that my channel is not partially the house that Jason helped build. But you know what though, Friday the 13th movies are always fun with the over-the-top kills and the chasing. If you've never experienced a slasher movie, it always has a fun horror atmosphere. And for those of you who haven't seen it, just think of it like a superhero or a fantasy movie, but instead of rooting for the good guys, you're rooting for the bad guy to kill people. I will be ranking all the Friday the 13th movies in the future, but if you've never seen these movies and you've always been kind of interested, there's no better time than now. HBO's Spawn. Now obviously you can also see this on HBO, but if you don't have HBO, it is available on Prime. And this show was ahead of its time. Spawn takes the visual concepts that you would see in Batman the Animated Series and Disney's Gargoyles, and it just turns it up to 11. In the era of the late 90s, the idea of an American-made violent action cartoon that says the F word and tells a compelling story really didn't exist too much. I really can't praise Spawn's animation enough, because even watching it back today, it still holds up. And if you're a fan of Spawn, you're really going to like this show. I would have to say the only negative thing about it is when the show ends, it's going to leave you wanting more. Good Omens. My god, did this show cause a lot of controversy last year. So much so, people on Twitter demanded that Netflix cancel it. And Netflix said sure, because they're not the ones that make it. Amazon does. So the show essentially is a dark comedy about an angel and a demon being friends and kind of being responsible for a lot of things that's happened throughout the world's history. Of course, there's a lot more to it than that, but I found the show not only to be funny, but when it was over, it actually made me think a lot. And I honestly hope that Amazon doesn't cancel it and there is a season 2. So if you are super hardcore religious, Maybe you won't like this show, but honestly, I believe the people that were complaining about this, I doubt they ever seen an episode of it. Because in reality, I didn't find anything in the show to be mocking or distasteful in any kind of way towards Christianity or religion or whatever. And to be perfectly honest, I have a sense of humor about stuff, so I enjoyed it thoroughly. So if you got a sense of humor too, you will probably like this show as well. Lupin III Part 1. Now, I've talked about Lupin III on this show before a couple years back. Lupin is absolutely my favorite anime franchise of all time. The best part about Lupin is you can jump in anywhere. And what better place to start than with the original series? This thing started back in 1971, and here we are in 2020, and there are still series and TV specials and movies coming out today. Now, you will find the first couple episodes kind of dark, and then the series lightens up a lot. I think it gives us a lot of opportunity to see the different elements of Lupin's character. And I think if you give this classic anime a shot, you'll become a Lupin fan. Gas Pump Girls. Now, this is not one that you hear people talk about very often. Gas Pump Girls came out at a time when sex comedies were just starting to become in vogue. The thing of it is about this one, there's really only one sex scene. If anything, Gas Pump Girls is a lot more story-driven. The basic premise is one of the girls' uncles has a heart attack, and his gas station is on the verge of closing because the gas station across the road wants to put them out of business. So the girl and her friends dress up in bikinis to get customers to shop at their gas station. But the bottom line of why you should watch this movie is this. The movie is not very long, so it's not a hard watch. It'll give you a laugh, and so I would recommend it. Lady Death. Even if you're a comic book fan, most people probably don't even know who Lady Death is, let alone that she had a movie. The thing about this film is the animation is a mixed bag, because when it comes to Lady Death herself, the main characters, as well as all the backgrounds, it looks amazing. On the other hand, some of the demons in the show kind of remind me of the Legend of Zelda cartoon from the 90s. So it's not perfect all the way across. If I had any other criticisms of this movie, maybe they could have shortened the origin story by about 10 minutes. But you know what? Some people like that, and it doesn't ruin the movie. If you're a fan of comic book characters, you're a fan of animation, and you just want to see something different that maybe you've never seen before, give Lady Death a watch. You might be surprised. Chopping Mall, formerly known as Killbots. I guess this is what you would call a sci-fi slasher movie. It has a very simple plot. It doesn't reinvent the wheel. I mean, it's about these security robots and they get struck by lightning. Whole bunch of partying teenagers that are doing things they shouldn't be are stuck in the mall, and these killbots are, well, trying to kill them. Typically, I will watch an older 80s movie if I come across it. The thing that surprised me about this one is how much I enjoyed it. It's got that 80s cheese factor written all over it, but what surprised me was, compared to some of the other slashers, the characters were actually kind of well written and memorable. I don't think this movie's going to scare anybody, but it's going to kind of give you that 80s sex comedy vibe mixed with the horror vibe, even though it's not really supposed to be a comedy. But it just sticks out to me for some reason. I think you can enjoy it anytime. Even if you're one of those people that only like watching scary movies around Halloween time, Chopping Mall would probably be a pretty good one for you to watch. High School USA. Classic film starring Michael J. Fox. It's one of those early high school comedies with bullying and the popular girls dating the jerk and so on and so forth. But you know what? I found it had a certain level of charm. And even though it has a lot of the typical things of those old school 80s movies, like the big race at the end, and the story felt very formulaic, but despite all that, the characters still seemed likable and you wanted to root for them. I could totally see shades of Marty McFly in that early Michael J. Fox character. So if you got a little bit of time, it's short, worth a watch. Give High School USA a try. The Cable Guy. Now, this is a Jim Carrey movie that I've kind of wanted to talk about for a long time. It's probably his most underrated film because when it came out, it was such a dark comedy and so different than anything he had done before it. A lot of people panned it. Those type of movies weren't the norm back in the 1990s. Jim Carrey not only comes off as a sadistic troll, but it's just got a certain dark side about it that's kind of funny, but it does rub people the wrong way. However, it is a social commentary about people not only of the time, but also of today. On one hand, the movie's dated because it's about people wasting their lives watching cable. On the other hand, you could totally apply that to people and how much time they spend on the internet. Please don't turn this video off. I do find that not a lot of people talk about the Cable Guy, and I do think that there's a core group of people that just never have seen it. I also know that it's become a cult classic, and I believe a lot of people that haven't seen it will accept it for what it was supposed to be. So yeah, Cable Guy, go watch it. Forget About It. This is another adult animated show that come out of Canada. But Forget About It definitely has a more Family Guy-esque type vibe to it. The premise, in my opinion, is hilarious. A guy accidentally kills his boss in the mob, and now he's forced to live in the witness protection program in Canada. And just seeing that family try to cope with that entire situation is just fucking genius. It practically writes itself. The one thing that sticks out about this show is all the characters are memorable. Every one of them. They all have their own individual personalities, and it's like you just don't forget about them. See what I did there? I'd say the worst thing about this show is finding out after 3 seasons that it had been canceled. So if you like adult animation, treat yourself and forget about it. American Horror Story. Now I know I mentioned this in the Netflix video. I just recently did a video where I ranked all the seasons of American Horror Story, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. You guys know my thoughts about it. If you don't, check out the other videos, shameless plug. But the first 8 seasons are available on Prime, and you should really go out of your way to see it. Fritz the Cat. Man, I've been waiting a long time to talk about this one. Fritz the Cat was made by Ralph Bakshi in 1972, and it was the first adult animated cartoon to get an X rating. And by today's standards, that would be probably NC-17, I believe. Now, if you have young children or you're of the appropriate age to watch this, you probably may not want to watch it in front of your mother or anything. This entire movie is a reflection of the time that it came out, and there is some stuff in there that wouldn't fly by today's standards. But if anybody actually watched the movie, they would see that this is for a positive purpose. It's not mean-spirited in any kind of way. In fact, a lot of the conversations that you hear in the movie is Ralph Bakshi going to subways and places in New York and tape recording people's real conversations. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this one. I may want to cover it in the future. But it's just one of them things, if you haven't seen it, it's something you will never forget. And that was things you should watch on Amazon Prime Video. If you guys have seen anything on Amazon Prime that you think should have been in this list, leave a comment down below. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching The Derek Ruby Show. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and Instagram. And as always, have a good one, and I'll see you guys next time. You know, I decided that I'm not going to do the little COPPA warning thing anymore in my videos. If you're a child, where the fuck are your parents at? Get the fuck out of here and don't come back. At least not till you're the appropriate age.